Sports 760. John, happy college basketball season. I know it's been here for a month, but it's good to have you back with us. First of all, what are your thoughts here? San Diego State just completely, basically a brand new roster, right? Completely new starting five. They beat Houston the other day in Vegas. They beat Creighton the other day in Vegas. What do you make of the Aztecs a month in? And thanks for joining us in San Diego, man.
Always great to be with you, John and Jim, and always look forward to talking college hoops with you. Jim, sorry that John threw a fastball there.
It's okay. It happens all the time, John.
Oh, okay. You're just used to it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. College hoop season arrived for San Diego State last week because when you go into that Players Era Festival in Vegas and you're in the role that San Diego State's in, where last year the Mountain West was incredible, this year it's been solid. It could be a multi-bid league. It's still early, but it's going to get multiple bids to the NCAA tournament. We'll see how many. I would probably say this is a year where not 6, maybe it's more of like a 3 or 4 situation. But again, it's early. But when you're San Diego State and you lose by 13 to Gonzaga at home, when you're in the position that they're in, you go into Vegas and you really need to make some hay. You've got to be able to do some things. And I believe they beat 2 teams that will hear their name called on Selection Sunday. No question on Houston. A little bit of a question on Creighton, who's struggling right now and who's been banged up, but has Kansas tonight and has an opportunity. But what the Aztecs showed us last week is what I've been saying on this show and what we've all been saying on this show for a number of years. San Diego State is a national program. They are on the level that a Gonzaga is year in and year out in terms of maybe not top 5, top 10, but I'm saying in the top 25, operating as a consistent program that's nationally known and a winning program. And that's because they're incredibly well coached by Brian Dutcher, who has made a couple of really interesting finds. I mean, one, Magungwa has become an elite shot blocker. 4 blocks per game right now for this team. Defensively, he's changing the game. So then on the offensive end of the floor, you say, all right, no more Lamont Butler, and we've lost this piece and that piece. What do we do? Well, I thought they did a great job of identifying who they needed, but also developing. That's why San Diego State's a national program. They develop players. B.J. Davis is a different player now than he was a year ago. You go out, you get Nick Boyd, but Miles Bird, John, you've seen it, goes from a guy scoring 4 points per game to a guy scoring 13 per game and 5 rebounds per game and 3 assists per game. Like they doubled down on keeping kids and of getting them better. And that's refreshing in today's college basketball. So they did lose a lot, but the guys that they kept, it's a group that, I really like, and I think they just play their tails off. They're never going to be outworked. And that was on display in Vegas. And they're a really difficult team on a short prep, even though the Houston game came after a couple of days. But that was just an amazing win over Houston to take that 73-70, take it in overtime too. Remarkable week for the Aztecs, and now tonight they get back into it at Fresno State. No rest for the weary, and this is a program now that has a real chance. I mean, they have 5 games in the month of December, and I don't see any reason why they can't win all 5 of them.
John, what do you make of the NIL tournament that they were just in, and then how that might evolve in college basketball going forward? Is like that might be the type of tournament that you see around the country because NIL is so important.
Well, I was skeptical when this event came about, and I think everybody was, because we didn't know how it would work and what's there to gain financially. I think what you have is a group of people who are at some pretty large corporations. Ever Wonder is a corporation that let me be honest when I say, like, I think that they're just they funded a lot of this, and for them it's more of a passion creative project than anything. Of course you want to make revenue off it, but you guys turned on the game and the floor looked like it was like a NASCAR uniform with the amount of sponsors that were on the floor. But I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, you know what? This could work. This is different. It's got a little bit of a wrinkle to it. It's just kind of refreshing to see. And I think in the NIL era, anybody that's willing to embrace NIL opportunities, no matter what they are, if you've got the money to play with, you're going to be able to succeed. And the people who ran this tournament deserve a lot of credit for putting on a first-class event, because by accounts from all the coaches, Seth Berger, who's at Orifice and headed up this Players Era tournament, he worked with Intersport. And this is deep in the weeds now, but I'm just telling everybody out there, Intersport, they run the Greenbrier tip-off. You saw Pitt play Wisconsin. They run the Fort Myers event. Michigan beat Xavier there last week. Talk to anybody who runs an Intersport event, and they will tell you they know what they're doing. The guy who ran this event, Seth Berger, picked Intersport to help run it. He got the NIL dollars to fund it. He gave the coaches and players first-class treatment. They didn't have to leave the building. Their hotels were attached to the arena. It was really easy to get in and out. It was like the NCAA tournament bubble. It allows your teams to focus, to lock in, to spend time together. This is the future because there's NIL money. Coaches don't want to get on a 12-hour plane to Maui and play in Hawaii. If I am running Maui right now, if I'm running the Maui Invitational, I am on the phone with Seth Berger. I am on the phone with NIL people because I need to preserve my event. The only way you're preserving an event like that takes 12 hours of travel is if you have some money involved. The only way that these event holders pulled a Thanksgiving week-long event off in Vegas that had 2 gap days, it won't next year, but had 2 gap days, the only way you do it is by funding it. 2-game MTEs where it's back-to-back days, like the Fort Myers tip-off. The Charleston Classic has 3, but Battle for Atlantis has 3 games in 3 days. You can pull that off. But when you're going in a location that's a little bit outside the box for East Coast teams, San Diego State, close to Vegas, you got to be able to generate NIL funding. This did. And it's a huge benefit to the Aztecs that Brian Dutcher said, you know what, we need to do this event because now he's in the door. And once you're in the door with this event, you stay in this event.
John Fanta, Fox Sports with us. It's funny, you just went down that path. I wasn't going to ask this, but I will. About what Dan Hurley said about Maui, right? We're not going to do the 3-game MTE. We'll play home and homes. We'll play marquee events. What's your reaction? I just think back. I was in Maui 2 years ago. San Diego State lost heartbreakers there. They went 1-2. They end up in the national championship game against UConn. That year, they lost a heartbreaking game there to Arkansas. Lamont Butler had, I think, 2 costly mistakes late in that game. The game was completely stolen from them. And you're thinking, well, maybe they don't want to go back. They went 1-2. Well, they learn from it, and they make it all the way to the national championship game. What was your reaction to what Dan Hurley said?
Well, I think Dan Hurley was speaking on that, knowing that he has a benefit, guys, that not many others do to the same degree.
Yeah.
Dan Hurley has TV networks calling him trying to make games happen. I could tell you on this show, there are strong efforts. I haven't even reported this. To John and Jim, you guys are getting it first here. There have been a lot of efforts between Connecticut and Duke and UConn and Syracuse to make a couple of games happen between, UConn, Syracuse, UConn, Duke, a series. The television partners, meaning Fox, NBC, and now Turner for the Big East, they all want these big games. UConn has the luxury of, they can reach out to a network and say, can we make a game happen at the Garden on Saturday, December 14th?
Right.
And the Garden comes back and says, yeah, we'll have you play Gonzaga. And it'll be part of a multi-year series. ESPN will take this game out in Washington, and you'll get Gonzaga back at the Garden. But, you won't have to play Gonzaga at the Kennel. When Hurley's talking there, he's talking like a coach of the back-to-back reigning champions who he doesn't need any more MTE games than he's offered. He's got more offers right now than he has slots available. It's easy for him to say that. That's my take on what he said.
Sure.
He did say it out of malice. He was pissed off that he went 0-3, but he felt that way going into it. At the end of the day, going out to Maui costs your school $350,000 to $400,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a fair point. John,
a lot of money.
Real quick before you go, San Diego, I don't know if we've had you on to comment on this. San Diego State and Gonzaga in the same league beginning in 2026. What's the impact?
Phenomenal. Can't wait for it. I think it's a game changer for San Diego State. And I think it's something that Gonzaga had to do. The WCC is just not good enough for them as a league. But for the Aztecs to be meeting Gonzaga in Big 12 games, and for a couple of their Mountain West colleagues to be going with them that I really like, I think that this is a win-win in every way for San Diego State between all their sports. But I think it's huge for basketball because San Diego State Gonzaga can be a real rivalry, and now it's going to be with this move. But when you include some of those others that are coming with them, Colorado State and Boise State and Utah State, there's some really good programs in there, and I think you're in for a league that's going to be a lot of fun out west in an area that right now the West has no identity. San Diego State and Gonzaga being in the same league gives the western part of the country real identity.
Love the perspective, John.
Love it.
Happy holidays. I know it's early. We'll catch up at some point again, hopefully right after the new year as we get towards March Madness once again. But we appreciate you hopping on in San Diego, man.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John and Jim. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, my friend. All right, John Fanta, Fox Sports, former Seton Hall student, where I was calling women's basketball games. And we were setting equipment up together.
Is there anybody better than John Fanta? My answer is no.
There is not.
There's not.
I've ran through the list of everyone. Yes. I asked ChatGPT and it says John Fanta.
Sorry, Darnay.